You know what? I had a sneaky feeling that this game was going to conjure up something magical, and it did. Aston Villa beating Bayern Munich, one of the favourites for the Champions League, 1-0 at Villa Park. And this felt like a massive game for a Villa fan. I mean, that's obvious, but just aside from the fact that Villa did beat Bayern Munich, this is a game that I feel like if you're a Villa fan, you will be speaking to your grandkids about the day that the superpower team of Bayern Munich, European giants, came to Villa Park and got absolutely schooled by Unai Emery. And not for the first time. Unai Emery's record against Bayern Munich speaks for itself. Consistently good, always does them with a game plan, and they've almost naively fallen into the traps every time. Bayern Munich, it showed that there are some naive tactical moments of company still alive and well. I complimented him greatly for the performance against Leverkusen at the weekend. If I'm going to compliment him, I've got to be fair and point out when he gets things wrong. And this just felt like the Burnley company fully in action here. And sometimes when you play that naively and you leave yourself so exposed for transitional opportunities, it doesn't matter who you're managing. If it's Bayern Munich or Burnley, you're still going to get fans in your away end snorting Charlie off their own hands. But let's go on to the Bayern Munich attacking phase and see where it really failed to materialise for them. Munich would be in their sort of 3-3-4-3-1-6 shape that they would be playing in. And that would be with Pavlovic in between the midfield and the defence, with Joshua Kimmich moving into a right centre back position, Konrad Laimer pushing up, as well as Alphonso Davies on the left hand side. Elise, who played the number 10, as Jamal Musiala was dropped to the bench, playing in the middle with Harry Kane, Coman and Gnabry holding the width, and Villa in their mid-block 4-4-2 that would drop deeper as Bayern had more control of the ball and longer spells of possession. Weren't engaging, they were passive in their press. They restricted space well for Bayern to play through. And as I say, Watkins and Rodgers were passive in that back three, sort of shifting across where need be between Upamecano, Kim and Kimmich. Tillemans and Onana would back up, sort of maintaining the gap between themselves and the defensive players, especially blocking passes into the likes of Elise and Kane. Elise could drop in a little bit deeper and be looked after by either Onana or Tillemans, just to make sure there wasn't an easy pass into the danger man who would come into a right back position, as Serge Gnabry would come inside, Lehmann playing as the maybe natural right back to receive it out here, trying to shadow the ball from going into him from Joshua Kimmich while then pressing him up here. Tillemans and Onana could shift across, and then you could get likewise on the opposite side with Onana coming across here if the ball maybe goes to Kim and Rodgers is stuck on Pavlovic. They would have that well, but Ramsey would make sure to try and block that pass going into Lehmann. And on the left-hand side for Bayern Munich, you'd have Davies moving up a lot more aggressively than Konrad Laimer would, operating in that sort of left wing position, which would push Coman inside, who would then be followed by Ezri Konsa, as Carlos then moves centrally to take care of Harry Kane, and Philogene would end up into a sort of right back position, as he would be marking Alphonso Davies and would follow him right into the back line. And so at points, Villa's shape became a 5-3-2, just making sure that back line was nowhere near as exposed as it could be. Solidity in the middle, that central area compact, cutting off the way that Bayern Munich would try and play through the centre. And as a result, you'd maybe get the likes of Coman dropping into this position, alongside Pavlovic with maybe Kimmich pushed up to make it sort of 2-3 in these deeper build-up stages. You'd even get Harry Kane on occasion dropping in to get on the ball and use his passing ability to create from these deeper zones, finding the likes of Coman, finding the likes of Alphonso Davies with their movement in behind. Gnabry would typically come in a lot more centrally to exploit the space in behind the Villa defence, playing on the shoulder of the last man. Elise wasn't as comfortable being in that free role with Musiala. He's not going to progress the ball. He's not as comfortable in tight spaces as Musiala. And it felt a weird decision to drop Musiala from the start. When Villa are going to restrict the space and turn it into a very compact mid-block, you need someone who's comfortable taking the ball in between the lines under pressure to create space and break through those just congested zones. And Elise, as much as he's been fantastic for Bayern and he is a brilliant player, isn't that. If Bayern did try and create on that right-hand side and maybe Gnabry showed in a little bit deeper, or Elise did, with Gnabry being taken care of by Digne, Torres had a little bit more license to try and press and engage in these areas, especially if Ramsey got caught maybe going up towards maybe Kimmich on the right hand side for Bayern. Then that created the space that an Elise could drop into. Torres, again, comfortable engaging, using his physicality to try and stop Elise from getting on the ball and progressing and managing that space well. He's such a very good aggressive defender, Pau Torres. He's one of my favourites in the league at the minute. I think so far this season he's been, as much as Villa don't have the most amazing defensive record, I think he's been outstanding and doesn't get the credit he deserves. Every time I watch him, he impresses me. And even as much as Bayern could use these wide overloads and create chances on the right-hand side or the left-hand side to get crossing opportunities, Villa would defend the box well with the five at the back. Ramsey and Tielemans dropping in, so that 5-3 made it really hard for them to find players in the box that they could hit from these wider areas. And to be fair, Digne and Philogene and Konza would aggressively press the wide player on the ball to prevent him from getting those clear opportunities. Now, the deeper that Villa would sit, the more aggressively Bayern would push onto him and try and break him down. And you'd see both centre-backs and Kimmich pushed way into the Villa half. The most danger they got, Bayern, was Kimmich could get the ball in these areas here, sort of in this sort of right half space position for them, where it was a bit too far away for either Ramsey to go and engage with, for maybe Digne to come out and press and risk leaving him behind. So it was an area that Villa didn't really have a plan to go and press. And Watkins and Rodgers were remaining central at all points. Watkins was a lot higher than Rodgers to keep on Upamecano for reasons we'll speak about in a second, and Rodgers would do a good job of shadowing that pass into Pavlovic. So when Villa could stop him from playing down this side, they had to resort to playing in the centre and switching it over to the other side. Getting it to Pavlovic was a lot harder, and Rodgers did a really good job of just maintaining on him. So they had to go long and had to play riskier balls or try and overload and use their rotations to break Villa down in the centre, which didn't always happen. But Kimmich could get some space in this right half space to then play balls in behind to the likes of Gnabry, to the likes of Lehmann, making inverted or overlapping runs, or open play crosses in these areas to find the likes of Harry Kane, which he did a number of times, and he really did create a few chances from these areas, Kimmich. But the right-hand side didn't give him enough quality to play with. Gnabry and Lehmann were very, very poor and easy for Villa to mark, easy for Pau Torres to engage with in these areas to prevent this easy pass. And he got tight with him that he could get his body against him and prevent him from turning him and attacking the space and behind. And Digne managed Konrad Laimer really well, to be fair. And Laimer just isn't that much of a threat. He's a great workhorse. He's a great athlete. And he is adaptable to a system, but doesn't offer a lot of quality in doing so. And Philogene did a fantastic job on Davis on that left-hand side, never really gave him enough time to get on the ball and create crossing opportunities. He was always fairly well managed, never available for the quick pass. And the most that Bayern had a bit of joy with was in the first half when Jacob Ramsey went off with an injury and Jaden Philogene moved to left midfield. So he wasn't doing the tracking of Alphonso Davies. On came Leon Bailey, who had a really poor game for the half an hour he was on in attack and defence, gave the ball away so many times. And as a result, with him being on the pitch, it turned Villa into a bit more of a 4-4-2. So Ezri Konza was forced to come out and defend the wide areas a lot more, and he was brilliant at it, to be fair. Konza defended that right-hand side, having to balance between Coman and Davies excellently. They never got any more exposed, despite having more space to work with in these areas because of that substitution. And you have to credit Konza for that. It's a fantastic fullback performance from him defensively. But with the aggressive nature of the way Bayern played, needlessly as well at points, this then left the main threat for Aston Villa, and it was for Ollie Watkins in the first half and John Duran in the second half. The counter-attacking ball to Watkins, either side of Upamecano, was always on from Martinez or whoever just got the opportunity to sight this ball through. And Watkins would make these runs off the side of Upamecano, where Upamecano would be forced into fouling him a few times. He was very lucky, Upamecano, to not end up with a red card in this game. He deserved 2 yellow card fouls. In fact, you can argue the first one is a straight red because he's denying potentially a clear goal-scoring opportunity. And he had a bit of a nightmare. It was an Upamecano game. It was just a game that caused so many silly mistakes for him. Again, not helped through the system because the distances that exist between him and Kim and him and Kimmich was easy for Watkins to make these runs into, and it was easy for Villa to find an angle for a pass into these areas that he could just really torment Upamecano. Now, Bayern did try and equalise this by having Neuer ready to sprint off his line and sweep up in behind. But at 38, you can't always rely on that. And when John Duran came on, and he added a similar threat, but one that's hard to manage for teams when you look at his goal scoring record off the bench this season, and you had that space exploited of Upamecano and the distance between the centre-backs, and Neuer getting caught in between coming out and staying in and leaving the space for John Duran to pull off the finish he did. It was just a problem that Bayern brought onto themselves. And I get playing high and I get you playing against a team that's suckering you onto them, but you're leaving yourself so exposed in these areas for the transition. And Villa have proven throughout their time under Unai Emery they're a capable transition team. And so when Neuer came out and presented John Duran with that opportunity to pull off the finish he did, in his form, he's not saying no to that, and it was a fantastic finish. But a few times Villa did play out, Bayern was still very naive in the way they approached it, as we'll go on to now. So Villa would look to build up in the way they normally do. It would be the sort of 2-4-4 that would quickly turn into a sort of 3-2-5, as Digne would move up into an attacking left wing position, allowing Jacob Ramsey to come inside, Morgan Rogers in the right 10, and Philogene on the right hand side. And Bayern went man to man. They tried to press high, they tried to press aggressive, and Villa would use that against them. They'd sucker the press on, they'd play it around the back, just forcing Bayern onto them, creating spaces within their shape that they could look to exploit in one of two ways. One was with the aforementioned way of playing it back deep to either Martinez or just a defender that could get a clear pass away, to then knock it upfield to allow Watkins to attack the space in behind Upamecano or John Duran in the second half. As Kim would look to go and engage Rodgers, Kimmich would go up to Ramsey, Lehmer would get pushed all the way up to Digne, and Davis was hamstrung out on the left-hand side with Philogene. Or by calmly and confidently playing through the back, using Tielemans and Onana's press resistance to sort of manoeuvre that press around and create a clear pass into Morgan Rogers. It would look to sucker Kim onto him, get him one-on-one, and then quickly use his physicality and his great turn of pace to use Kim's over-eagerness against him, turn him and play into space and drive at that Bayern Munich back line, where he could then look to maybe create a chance for himself or play a pass to Ollie Watkins, which he did a number of times, and he used his great ball carrying and great physicality and unbelievable balance to ride those challenges of Kim, who lost every duel he had with him. And I think this was the main difference between the two, the defensive discipline of the players. Kim struggled with Rodgers, Upamecano struggled with Watkins and John Duran. And when John Duran even said in the interview that he was looking for Upamecano, he wasn't looking for Neuer, he was looking for Upamecano to judge what his next action was paramount. But then you look at the way that Diego Carlos, Ezri Konsa, and Pau Torres, and even Luca Dean defended their players in these areas. They won every duel. They were compact, and the distances they covered were better because they were a compact unit. They weren't defending as individuals that Bayern Munich were, and Bayern Munich suffered. And it's something that Vincent Kompany is going to have to sort out because he's leaving himself too far exposed. And Upamecano and Kim in these one-on-one situations, they're not reliable enough to consistently win their duels without making any mistakes. You're just never going to get it from these two. You don't need to see any more of these two playing to understand that. So, you reap what you sow, and Vincent Kompany can't feel hard done by. If anything, I actually thought that Villa were getting a bit unlucky with some refereeing decisions. Tactically, Unai Emery destroyed Vincent Kompany, and fair play to Aston Villa. They deserved their night. Absolutely brilliant. And Bayern, it's not great. And as fantastic as Unai Emery is, they've got Barcelona next. And look, Barcelona have their own defensive troubles and they've got injuries galore at the back, but the way that Bayern are leaving themselves so exposed, they're asking for trouble. And Barca won't be happy sitting without the ball as long as Aston Villa were in this game. Aston Villa were comfortable with Bayern having 70% possession. Barca won't have that, and so they will look to exploit this and they will look to attack them aggressively and consistently. So we'll see. It'll be a great game. It's going to be a hell of a game. There'll be goals galore in that game. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment down below and tell me why either way. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.